Hello everyone, my name is Rob and I'm a postdoctoral scientist based in Vienna, Austria. In this video, I do a comprehensive set of scientific tests on the Oura Band 6. First, I'll test the quality of the sleep tracking against a scientific EEG monitor. Second, I will test the heart rate accuracy. Third, I will look at the SpO2 measurements. And finally, I will do a step counting test. As always, I do not want to waste your time, so timestamps are in the description below and also on the timeline. Before getting to the test, I would like to provide the most important background information on the Oura Band 6. The Oura Band 6 supports 10 sports modes, has menstrual cycle monitoring and up to 14 days of battery life. Additionally, it can measure your blood oxygen levels, it has 24-hour heart rate monitoring using Huawei's TrueScene 4.0 technology, and it measures your sleep using Huawei's TrueSleep algorithm. Overall, the Oura Band 6 looks and feels very similar to the Huawei Watch Fit and has a lot of the same software and features. Enough background, let's get to the tests, and I want to start off with the sleep test. For the sleep comparison, I wore the Oura Band 6 to bed for 5 nights. At the same time, I also wore this portable scientific EEG device and I recorded myself using an infrared camera. The EEG device measures brainwaves and muscle movements. It's called the Hypnodyne Z-Max and is being used by several of my colleagues in scientific studies. If you're interested in this device for scientific studies, I'll link it below. I manually went through the recording of the EEG and scored each part of the night for the different sleep stages. I exported my data from the Huawei servers and wrote some code to extract the data. With the infrared recording, I can actually check what my movements were like and see if the Oura Band 6 correctly predicts when I'm awake. Now, to the results I obtained. Let's first have a look at the accuracy over the 5 individual nights, after which I will do a statistical overview analysis. Here we see the first night I recorded. On top, you see the sleep stages as they were recorded using the EEG device. On the horizontal axis, we have the time of night, and as you can see, I went to bed around midnight. On the vertical axis, we have the different sleep stages, that being deep sleep, light sleep, REM sleep, and awake. The sleep stages are plotted in the same order that are usually displayed in research. On the bottom you can see a similar plot, but now for the sleep stages as they were recorded by the Oura Band 6. If we first look at deep sleep according to the EEG, which are marked here in purple, we see only a partial overlap between the Oura Band 6 and the EEG device. The Oura Band detected 2 out of the 3 deep sleep segments, which is not too bad. It did detect a little bit extra deep sleep near the end of the night though, so we'll have to see how it did for the other nights. Looking at REM sleep, which are marked here in red, we also only see partial detection. Overall, I must say, this does not look too good. To my eye, the REM sleep seems to be more or less randomly distributed over the night according to the Oura Band 6. To see the sleep cycles, I added non-REM sleep in blue and again marked REM sleep in red. Each sleep cycle starts with a combination of deep sleep and light sleep, together called non-REM, and always end in REM. For the last part of the night, it's kind of tricky to see any complete sleep cycles, so I didn't mark these. However, if I were to just base it on the data from the Oura Band 6, I would not be able to mark any of my sleep cycles. Next, let's take a look at the awake time, which I marked here in green. This was not detected that well by the Oura Band 6. I woke up twice during the night, but none of these awakenings was detected. Finally, sleep start and sleep end were detected quite well, as I marked here in yellow. So the total time spent in bed was detected really well by the Oura Band 6 for this night. Here we have the second night of sleep tracking. If we first look at deep sleep, we again only see a partial match. The first deep sleep segment was detected, but the second wasn't, and a lot of extra deep sleep was detected. REM sleep looks a little bit better, but there still seems to be some extra REM sleep that was not really there, and it misses some of it as well. This also means that the sleep cycles could only be partially detected. The first 3 cycles I can sort of see in the data of the Oura Band, but the sleep cycles at the end of the night were not really visible. Awake detection was a bit better for this night, and it detected 1 out of the 2 awakenings. Again, sleep start and sleep end detection were pretty good, so the total time spent in bed is pretty accurate. For the last 3 nights, I want to show you the highlights of each of the sleep stages, so we can see how consistent these are. If we look at deep sleep here first, we see that for this night it sort of picked up on all the 3 segments, but it was always just a little bit too early. It also picked up on some extra deep sleep near the end of the night. The same can be said for this other night. Most deep sleep is detected, but the segments always start a bit too early, and some extra deep sleep is also detected. For this night, the deep sleep detection is pretty bad. Way too much deep sleep was detected. For REM sleep, we see that this night was pretty okay, though some extra REM sleep was detected. For this night here, it was much worse. At the end of the night, there might be some overlap, but overall, it's not great. And finally, for this last night here, it was really pretty bad, with what seems to be to me more or less random amounts of REM sleep throughout the night as detected by the Oura Band 6. Looking at awake detection, we saw before that it seemed to be a bit too robust, where it would only detect pretty long awakenings. And that's also what we see here for these nights. Here it picked up on none of the awakenings. For this night it picked up on the longer awakening and for some reason also detected an extra one. And finally here again it missed the one awakening completely. To finish off, looking at sleep onset detection and detecting the moment I woke up in the morning, this is pretty spot on. For all nights it seems to be pretty good, also for this night here and this night here, only with a slight shift sometimes. Based on these results, I would say that the Oura Band 6 is decent at detecting when you fall asleep at night and when you wake up in the morning. However, it appears pretty bad at detecting the actual sleep stages. To get an even more objective view of the results, let's calculate some statistics regarding the consistency between the sleep stages of the Oura Band and the EEG device. However, first a quick side note. If you're interested in the latest updates on the wearables I'm testing, consider subscribing to my Instagram and my weekly newsletter. Of course, you would also make me really happy if you subscribe to this YouTube channel. Enough self-promotion, let's see what the overview statistics say. First, let's look at the total percentage of each sleep stage the EEG device and the Oura Band 6 predicted. Here are displayed those percentages for the EEG device on the left and the Oura device on the right. Overall, these percentages do not agree very well. The Oura Band 6 mostly predicts way too much deep sleep and not enough light sleep. The total amount of REM sleep and awake time on the other hand agree pretty well. However, of course, these percentages do not tell the full story. More important even than these total percentages is checking if the Oura Band 6 predicts the correct sleep stages at the right time. And that's what I displayed here. On top we have the sleep stages according to the EEG device, and on the left the sleep stages according to the Oura Band 6. Now each column here sums to 100%, meaning that we can see what percentage of each of the actual sleep stages was recorded as each sleep stage by the Oura Band 6. First, looking at deep sleep, we see that a little over half of what was deep sleep was also predicted as being deep sleep. However, a lot of it was also predicted as being light sleep, which matches with what we saw for the individual nights. The rest of it was predicted as being REM sleep. Next, looking at light sleep, we see that this was a bit worse. Almost 50% was correctly predicted as light sleep. However, a lot of it was also predicted as deep sleep and REM sleep. This is likely where a lot of the extra deep sleep came from that we saw in the individual nights. Looking at REM sleep, this is pretty bad. Only about 1/3 of what was actually REM sleep was also predicted as being REM sleep. The majority of it was actually detected as being light sleep. In some ways, that means that the REM sleep, according to the Oura Band, is actually a better predictor of light sleep than light sleep according to the Oura Band. Finally, awake time was detected okay-ish. It detected about half the awake time correctly. However, the other half was detected as light sleep and also some as REM sleep, which comes back to the Oura Band not being sensitive enough to detect all awake time. To conclude, the sleep stage detection of the Oura Band 6 is not great. It detects the deep sleep that I had okay, though still with a lot of issues. Overall, the sleep stages are not that reliable and especially REM sleep tracking is bad. On the other hand, the total time spent in bed appears to be tracked rather well. For the next set of tests, let's have a look at the heart rate accuracy of the Oura Band 6. To test the heart rate accuracy, I will compare it to the Polar H10 ECG chest strap, which is generally considered to be one of the most accurate consumer devices available for heart rate measurements. I wore both the Oura Band 6 and the Polar H10 chest strap for 24 spinning sessions and 14 weightlifting sessions. That way I can check my heart rate at different heart rate ranges. Let's have a look at those results. Here I displayed an overview of the heart rate accuracy. Each dot here is a single heart rate measurement with along the horizontal axis the value according to the polar H10 chest strap and on the vertical axis the value according to the honor band 6. The blue line indicates perfect agreement, so any measurement along this line had roughly the same value for the polar H10 and the honor band 6. The red line indicates those measurements where the value according to the honor band 6 is half that of the actual value according to the polar H10. The reason I added this line is because in the past I've seen that many devices measure about half the actual heart rate when they make a mistake. The more measurements there are in a certain area, the darker black the color. As you can see, overall there's a very good agreement between the honor band 6 and the ECG chest strap, since most points are along the blue line. Only here in the lower to middle heart rate ranges do we see some more deviations between the honor band 6 and the polar H10. Since the points are below the blue line, this means that the honor band 6 detected a too low heart rate in these moments. Let's have a look at the individual training sessions to see if we can find the underlying cause. Here you see the first spinning session. Along the horizontal axis we have the time, and my heart rate is along the vertical axis. In red I plotted my heart rate according to the polar H10 chest strap, and in blue is my heart rate according to the honor band 6. As you can see, I took 3 short breaks in this spinning session where my heart rate would dip. So for this first spinning session we see pretty good agreement. The blue line is almost always perfectly overlapping the red line, except for in the middle here where there was a slight deviation. However, I would not consider this a big problem. That's what we can see for most spinning sessions, like this one here. Most of the time there's really good agreement, though sometimes there's a small deviation, as you can see here. Small side note, you can ignore that it says Huawei here on the right. Honor used to be a part of Huawei, so they still use the same servers and the same data format. And I used some general code that I originally wrote to analyze some of the Huawei data. Moving on, we can draw the same conclusions for this spinning session. Again, pretty good agreement. And again, for this next session, almost perfect agreement. Here as well, where the blue line and the red line almost perfectly overlap. The only thing that did sometimes happen is that at the beginning of my training, the watch would need a bit of time to catch up with my actual heart rate. As you can also see here, and also in this session here, where in the first part of the training it needs a bit of extra time to catch up. There were just 1 or 2 training sessions where it made a bigger mistake, of which this is the most clear example. Here you can see that for about half the training it failed to pick up on my increased heart rate. I'm unsure why this is and why this training was different, but it seems to be the exception rather than the rule. Next, let's have a look at weightlifting. For this first session we see something that is typical for many of the optical heart rate sensors I've tested so far. Basically, it can track the overall patterns in my heart rate changes, but not the sudden spike in heart rate that accompany each set I did. Because during weightlifting I flex the muscles and tendons near my wrist, it makes it difficult for the watch to accurately detect the changes in my heart rate. This is basically the same pattern we see in all weightlifting sessions, where most of them miss some of the peaks as we see here. For this session here, it really picked up on none of the peaks. This session is actually a lot better. However, mostly it seems only after I finish the set and my muscles again relax, it suddenly picks up on my increased heart rate, as you can see at the end of each spike in this session. Overall, the Honor Band 6 performs well when it comes to heart rate measurements. During my cardio workouts, it performed really well. During weightlifting, it struggled a bit, but this is true for most wrist-worn wearables. So far, the only watch that really did well during weightlifting was the Apple Watch. However, this is truly in a different price range than the Honor Band 6. Next, let's take a look at SpO2 or oxygen saturation. In really simple terms, this is the percentage of red blood cells in the bloodstream that contain oxygen. This can be important to measure because it can be used as an indicator for several conditions. For instance, it can be used to 1. Detect sleep apnea, where you basically stop breathing for 30 seconds or more during sleep. 2. Keep track of lung diseases. And 3. Potentially detect respiratory infections such as COVID-19. In all these cases, your blood oxygen saturation can drop from anywhere in the low 90s to 60%. Normal ranges, on the other hand, are anywhere between 95 and 100%. To collect enough SpO2 data, for the last few weeks in the morning and evening, I took 1 or more SpO2 measurements with the Honor Band 6 and 4 measurements with a dedicated SpO2 monitor. In total, I took 89 SpO2 measurements with the Honor Band 6. Now the Oura Band 6 uses reflectance pulse oximetry, basically shining light on your skin and measuring the reflected light. The dedicated SpO2 monitor uses the more established transmittance pulse oximetry, which shines light on one side of your finger and measures what comes through on the other side. I discussed the difference between the two types of oximetry in more detail in a video on the Withings Scanwatch. But in general, transmittance pulse oximetry is considered more accurate and is used in hospitals around the world. At first I was a bit hesitant to put any tests on oxygen saturation in the video. For a really good test, I would want to artificially change the amount of oxygen in the air, thereby changing my SpO2 values to much lower levels. During this experiment, I would actually measure the blood gases in my blood by taking blood samples. Unfortunately, I cannot do either of these things. However, I can check if the measurements of the Oura Band 6 fall into a realistic range and if they agree with my finger pulse oximeter. This is not a conclusive test though, since if the Oura Band always randomly reported values between 95 and 100%, this test would not pick up on that. Regardless, let's have a look at the results. First, I plotted the average of all the SpO2 measurements and also their variation, which is indicated by these lines here. It's called the standard deviation. On the left are the results for the Oura Band, and on the right are the values for my finger pulse oximeter. Both actually agree pretty well. On average, the values of the finger pulse oximeter are about 1 percentage point higher, but both of them are within the normal healthy range. In general, the accuracy that these devices are rated at is also a few percentage points, so I would not expect perfect agreement. Now, I recently started testing the previous generation of Oura Band, the Oura Band 5, and the results for that I've plotted here. You can see that this one actually measured much lower SpO2 values, and there's also a much bigger spread in these values. So a very tentative conclusion would be that the Oura Band 6 performs slightly better than the Oura Band 5, though we would need much more data to conclusively say this. Finally, in an ideal world, if both the Oura Band 6 and the finger oximeter would be 100% accuracy, they would also show a correlation. In this plot, I show the average SpO2 values measured each morning or evening for both devices. Along the horizontal axis are the values according to the Oura Band 6, and along the vertical axis the values according to the finger oximeter. I spread the points out a little bit along their exact values so they don't overlap perfectly. And as you can see, there's no real correlation between the two, meaning that we cannot draw a nice line through the points. Overall, we can say that the Oura Band 6 has reasonable values, though the spread is slightly higher than that for the finger oximeter. Overall, I would say that I found no reason to doubt the accuracy of the oxygen saturation measurements of the Oura Band 6. However, I still would like to test how well it detects a low oxygen saturation in a controlled setting. The Oura Band 6 also features a step counter. To see if this counts my steps accurately, I went out and took exactly 8,000 steps in segments of 1,000 steps. To get an accurate step count, I manually counted my steps using this tally counter. Let's take a look at the results. As I mentioned, for the step counting test, I went out and took 8 times exactly 1,000 steps. I wore the Oura Band 6 on my right arm for 4,000 steps and switched it to the other arm for the next 4,000 steps. And I alternated holding the step counter in my left hand and my right hand for each 1,000 steps, which is what the left and right labels refer to here. These are the actual steps counted by the Oura Band 6 when I was wearing it on my left arm. As you can see, they were pretty close to the actual 1,000 steps I took for each of the 4 segments. It was only 23 steps off maximum. When I was wearing it on my right arm, it also did pretty well, or possibly even better, being only 18 steps off maximum. Just to put that into perspective, here are also the steps counted by the Oura Band 5 and the Huawei Band 4. As you can see, the Oura Band 5 performs about equally well to the Oura Band 6. On the other hand, the Huawei Band 4 tended to overcount a bit, though it was not too bad. Overall, the step counting was very accurate. In a future video, I will do an even more detailed step counting test. In that video, I also want to test if the Oura Band 6 gives any false positive steps. With that I mean, does it count any steps when it's not supposed to count steps? For instance, when I'm typing or cycling. I also want to see how it performs on other people. Overall, I think the Oura Band 6 performed reasonably well. The heart rate measurements were pretty good, and I think for cardio workouts it should work well. As we've seen for most wrist-worn wearables, it performed less well during weightlifting. I would say that the sleep tracking was the weakest point of the Oura Band 6. It can detect your total time in bed rather well, however the sleep staging was not very good. I would consider the total time spent in bed to be the single most important thing you can measure about your sleep. So if anything was to be detected well, it should be this. However, there are alternative devices out there that can measure both this and your sleep stages. Though I cannot do a conclusive oxygen saturation test, the measurements I did get were in a realistic range, so at least this seems to be legit. Finally, the step counting accuracy was pretty good, with the Oura Band 6 counting the correct number of steps while walking. So, should you buy the Oura Band 6? Well, in general, I'm pretty positive about it. If you want accurate heart rate tracking during cardio, track your total time in bed, have an apparently okay oxygen saturation sensor, and decent step counting, then this device is for you. On the other hand, if you want a wrist-worn wearable that tracks your heart rate accurately under all circumstances, then you should get an Apple Watch. If you want the best sleep tracking from a watch, get a Fitbit device, like the Fitbit Charge 4, the Fitbit Sense, or the Fitbit Inspire 2 I looked at a few weeks ago. The Withings Sleep Analyzer, which you put under your mattress, also performs reasonably well. For the measurements with the dedicated SpO2 monitor, I use the middle finger of my left and right hands. A study that I'll link below found that the middle finger is probably the best finger to use, though honestly I didn't find the evidence extremely convincing. I own 3 different SpO2 monitors, and based on a previous video I made about how your oxygen saturation drops while flying, I found the SpO2 sensor I used in this test the most reliable. I found that it could clearly detect changes even in the normal oxygen saturation range. However, for proper SpO2 measurements, I would have to take blood samples. Finally, I should mention some more limitations of the data that I showed here. First of all, I just tested the Oura Band 6 on me, and it will be interesting to see how it performs on others. Second, the SpO2 test I did was very limited in its scope, as I also mentioned in the video. Finally, to do a full sleep comparison, it would be good to also test the Oura Band 6 against a full scientific polysomnography setup. We actually assembled a polysomnography device with OpenBCI components, and we're now working to get the software running. This way I'll not have to rely on sleep labs for my testing, which is especially difficult in these times of Corona. Now a big shout out to my colleague Rob for the 3D printing and putting it together, and my colleague Freddy for the hardware and software expertise. In my videos, I do scientific tests on different devices like the Oura Ring, the Fitbit, and the Scanwatch. And in the end, I hope to use tracking to improve my life. So if you like that subject and like this video, consider subscribing to my channel. And also consider giving it a thumbs up because it makes it easier for other people to find my videos. Thank you so much for watching, and consider checking out some of my other videos.